Hello, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. A viewer of mine had suggested the rational male, known as Rollo Tomassi. I've never seen any of his work, even though I've heard his name mentioned here and there, so I figured I would. And this is one video that was, I guess, short enough and recent enough. I've decided to talk about. It's entitled, quote, "Why did my ex-girlfriend move on so quickly?" And I guess one of the subtitles in the thumbnail is "Widows and War Brides."
On a Friday edition of The Rational Male.
What is this? Men Come in the Morning or Calf Child?
I have done several essays about the war brides dynamic, and it's something that I think needs a little bit better explaining. There are a lot of guys right now who are sort of coming into this space, coming into the man.
Okay, right off the bat, bro. I don't know how he's, cause I don't do this stuff. I'm not that hip to this stuff. But he has a fancy mic, I guess, and he's doing a lot to change what his voice actually sounds like. But either he's not doing it right, or it's not possible to make his voice sound that much better. Because even though he's trying to bring out these deep notes in his voice, again, I don't understand this stuff, but it seems to me like all the breathing and smacking and all these other mouth sounds are amplified as well. So I don't know if it's just the settings, but it just doesn't sound very natural. And to me, at least, it's a little bit irritating.
Atmosphere coming into the red pill, and they allude to the reasons or the I guess the concept of war brides, but they don't really comprehensively discuss it. And I have, like I said,
okay, so this concept of war brides, I don't know if it's his own or he's developed it more, heard it somewhere else, took it from somebody else, and made it his own. I don't know, but apparently people out there, according to him, aren't doing a good enough job of explaining it, and he will give you, as he says, a comprehensive explanation, right? An all-encompassing, very well-rounded presentation about what that is and what it means.
I've talked about this for quite some time. When I was a moderator on So Suave, I talked about this quite a bit. One of the most common questions, anyways, usually we get these, the same kind of questions over and over again from guys. How do I get my girlfriend back? How do I get frame? How do I recapture frame? That kind of stuff. Well, one of those questions, very common question.
Recapture frame? What the hell is that?
Was Rollo, my girlfriend left me, and now she's with another guy, and I can't stand the thought of her being with this other guy, right? I see it in my dreams, and it's just like it's driving me insane. And I mean, literally, they have like a I don't want to say PTSD, but they certainly have some sort of like very deep.
So he's talking about, obviously, what he's talking about, and guys being traumatized by breakups, right? I hope he has an evolutionary explanation for why men are so emotionally frail, right?
Psychological like pain from even just the thought, like the imagining, right? Because they had invested so much into that relationship, and now,
or why we invest so much in relationships, right?
I mean, it depends on how long, of course, it had gone on. A lot of guys will tend to overinvest in a relationship who end up later on, once they've sort of broken up with that girl. This is a common kind of side effect, I think, as far as their detoxing from that girl goes. And it really literally is detoxing in some cases. It's a physical, like almost an endorphin. I don't want to say dopamine, but it's an endorphin rush.
Okay, doctor.
That you get from like the initial sort of feelings of, I want to get with this girl, I want to have sex with this girl. It's like that infatuation actually has a chemical signature for it. So guys have a...
Again, if this is going to be comprehensive, right? If he's going to talk about both sides, and if he's going to start talking about evolution and women, obviously, he's going to tell us why guys are this way too, right? Why are we so emotional, bro?
Really tough time getting over that. So at some point, I think I'll probably end up doing a full show on detox. However, there's that side of the story, and then there's
So here, once again, you go with this dynamic that, women are toxic. And look, surely people are. Men, women, a lot of people out there are toxic, right? But I notice with these guys in the manosphere, it's this dynamic how, dudes are great and always correct, and women are just, toxic, I guess. this this manosphere is so gay, guys.
the other side of the story, which is, well, why is it so common for guys to have this problem, right? Why is it that so many guys talk about how quickly their girlfriend went from being very intimate with them, like almost to the point where they were like engaged or they were going to get married or they thought they were, to she never knew ye, right? She's sitting across the divorce table and she has no idea who you are. Or
do you think maybe some of that, in some instances, has to do with something the man did? Or is it just all her fault because she's toxic?
perhaps she is your girlfriend and then suddenly she ghosts you and now you see she's, with, I don't know, NBA players doing yacht parties in Miami.
So this meme, right? King Kong, let's say, kidnapping Anne, right? This sort of meme has been used, in my opinion, to traumatize and emasculate men. And even though there's a big racial component to it, it's it's used to emasculate all men, in my opinion.
Or something like that, right? She turns into somebody different. She turns into someone you never knew that she could possibly be. So that's one thing. The other side of this is
I mean, did she really turn into someone different, or was she always that? And it's something that you did that triggered it, right? Now look, I'm sure that did happen in a lot of instances. Well, I don't know, but like, it's just like her, right? Everything is her. It's all her fault. And again, as I pointed out before, if you never take responsibility for anything, you're never going to solve any of these problems. If you always put the blame on someone else, this is just basic shit, right? And it's really childish.
I think that a lot of guys misunderstand. They misread the signs. When their time is up. We've talked about this before. It's she was never yours. It's just your turn.
So if that's the case, not only is this a really shallow and terrible way to look at relationships and women, right? They're just objects to be used, I guess, like a toilet. But it doesn't explain how it is that a lot of people stay together forever, right? That doesn't explain that. And, because he will make it rely so heavily on, evolution, because I say so, how is it that it would seem couples stay together longer or forever, ever, more so in the past than today, right? When we were, I guess, closer to when certain behaviors evolved, right? In other words, marital problems or problems in relationships seem to be a bigger problem in the modern day, right? But he's going to use something from way back when in our so-called evolutionary history that to explain a new phenomenon, right? Okay. Not completely new phenomenon, but if the seeds for this, right, were sown way back in the day, how is it that there's more of it as of late, very recently, than before? At least it would seem it to be this way, right? Does this guy make much sense, if any at all?
Okay, that's not today's show. I've done that before with Ryan. We'll get to that at some point along the way. But
And I understand I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but if you've watched 2 or 3 these longer videos from some of these guys in the manosphere, you know how the game is played, right? That everything is evolution. We are this way because evolution.
um, that's sort of the pragmatic way of thinking about it. But why do we have to think about it that way? Why do we come to that? Well, that kind of rewinds us back to what I've sort of termed the war brides dynamic. And now that's something that's out of my first book, and it's something that we were talking about way back in the days of So Suave, back in the early 2000s, because we kept getting this question all the time, right? Well, how can she go from being like very familiar and very intimate with me to being like a total stranger? And now she's with this guy, and she seems like she's known this guy her entire life. Well, we're going to have to, rewind the tape here and go back into sort of an evolutionary history to figure those things out.
Okay, so there is no tape to rewind, right? This stuff isn't recorded, which is why to call it history is, I get it colloquially, whatever, but it's in strict terms, it's incorrect to call that history because before we recorded stuff, be it, on tape or in writing, everything that came before that is called prehistory, right? Because it's not recorded. And if it wasn't recorded, let's not act like it was. But he has to act like it was recorded because, he's not going to ponder. He's not going to suppose. He's not going to question. He's not going to, posit various possibilities. He's just going to say, we know this is how it was because this is our evolutionary history, even though that doesn't make any sense. Not in the strict sense. Not in this. Obviously, the shit this guy talks about is pseudoscientific drivel, but he wants to appear very like knowledgeable, dare I say, scientific and strict, right? He's going to give you a comprehensive explanation. Is he? But again, he has to color the conversation in a certain way. He has to bullshit basically to make himself appear so knowledgeable, right? So stuff that we only really guess about, he's going to call that history as if it were recorded. And we knew this without the shadow of a doubt.
So first and foremost, when I talk about the war brides dynamic, it is not just about breakups, but it is also about sort of women's nature when it comes to their mating strategy and when it comes to hypergamy. Okay, so for hypergamy, we're talking about alpha seed and beta need, and that's the nice way of saying.
And these are these like catchy little quips that they use. It helps to brainwash people, right? Because it's memorable. It's like they're little nursery rhymes, right? All of this is very infantile, childish, and it's just garbage, man.
AFBB, and you know what that stands for.
Nope.
But how did that evolve? How did that happen? Why is it that women tend to be more susceptible, let's just say, to things like Stockholm syndrome, which is sort of falling in love with your captor? Well, we have to.
Women are more susceptible to that? I mean, maybe, I don't know. But going from one relationship to another is, again, you got this, King Kong meme, right? Falling in love with their captor. As if they didn't have any agency. They were just objects, right? He's completely objectifying women. Like, we just kidnapped them, right? We dragged them by the hair into the cave and we do with them as we please, right? We're these tough guys. And if for some reason they leave us, we're traumatized and we cry like a bunch of little babies.
Go back to our ancestral past, and we have to look at how human beings lived prior to our agriculture, and when we lived as prior to that, of course, we were tribal gatherers, right? Hunter-gatherer tribes, and in pretty much all across human history, it has gone something like this: one tribe invades another tribe.
Clearly, he doesn't understand the meaning of the word history, so not in a strict sense. It is what it is. How does he know what all of our past was like when none of it was recorded, right? Or very little. We just get little clues here and there, some fossils and maybe some cave paintings. How does he know any of this? And look, I question this sort of historical or evolutionary or whatever you want to call it timeline because, like, for example, what he's talking about pre-agriculture, that was maybe agriculture started somewhere around, I don't know, 10 to 15,000 years ago, right? And prior to that, well, we were just living in caves and we were hunter gatherers. We were just these tribal beings. Well, I mean, there's a lot of evidence of much older advanced civilizations, right, that predate the Neolithic or the advent of agriculture, right? Or maybe they did have agriculture. There's just no signs of it yet. We haven't found. But like this video, go check it out. It's a really interesting one. Supposedly, there's a 40,000-year-old advanced ancient civilization in Ukraine. 40,000 years ago, right? So I question history, obviously, and the further back we go into our past, the more questions I have, right? Because stuff just doesn't add up. So if he's going to build a certain worldview based on something that's really questionable, right? If you're knowledgeable enough and you've seen enough, you know that it's not likely that it was this way, or it's not the whole story. It's not the whole picture. Now, look, am I saying that there were no people in caves, living in caves in tribal settings, 15,000 years ago? No, I'm not saying that. But there were people doing that 1,000 years ago. There are people doing that today. You know what I mean? So that sort of people, I think it's fair to say, always existed, right? I mean, to this day, we have people living out in the jungle, shooting each other with poison arrows, right? To this day, we have those people. So why couldn't we have forever had advanced civilizations and people in the jungle? I mean, we have the third world, we have the first world, right? Supposedly, some people went to the moon, supposedly. And some people still live in the Stone Age to this day. Why couldn't it have been like that forever, right? Our prehistory and history is presented as so linear, but is it? I don't know. So all of everything he says is kind of based in a lot of conjecture, presuppositions, and just guesses, and perhaps false paradigms, for all we know, right?
Kills off all the menfolk, kills off all the boys, and takes all of the women as spoils of war. Because women have an inherent value. They are the incubators of the next generation. So what happens is one dominant tribe comes in, wipes out another tribe, kills off all the men, and takes all the women for themselves, and then integrates them into their gatherer, their berry pickers, right? Their gatherer women, and breeds with those women because those women are valuable because they can spread the genetic legacy of the guys who were the conquerors, right? So now, as brutal as that sounds, that's simply the history of pretty much humankind for a very long time.
Like, just drivel, right? There's no evidence for this. He wants you to believe that that's what we did, and all of us did this forever until some point we stopped. Not that long ago, right? But we evolved. And he calls it history as if this were recorded, right? But this is just what the whole world did this. How come the tribes today don't do this? People that live in the Stone Age. I'm not saying they never do it, but all of them don't do this. There's people going into Australian outback studying Aboriginal tribes, and when these tribes run into each other, they barter, right? And women from one tribe have sex with men from the other tribe and vice versa, right? And then they barter goods. And then they go on their merry way, and that's it. Nobody dies, nobody gets murdered. That's how they relate to one another, right? Well, why couldn't it have been? That could have been another dynamic back in the day. Surely it was, right? To this day, we have evidence of this sort of thing happening. And I'm not saying there isn't any, but I've never heard of, just in this modern day and age for us, in these tribes that still live in the Stone Age, if you will, I've never heard of that happening, right? Does it happen? I don't know. But this is just like, it's just pseudoscientific drivel. Where is he getting all this shit from? I'll tell you where he's getting it from. He's reverse engineering the past to fit his preconceived notions and ideology. This is where ideology gets you.
So it's not just Vikings coming down, the northern coast and raiding villages. I mean, this is like something that has happened even in like Pacific Asian cultures, where the tribesmen will go over to different islands and just to raid the women, steal the women and take them back to their island, and then have them as war brides, and that's really what it boils down to. And so as a result of that,
That's it. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, I don't know how many thousands of years of human prehistory, or at the very least history that has yet not been discovered, or maybe it's hidden from us, right? That's basically what it boiled down to. Raping and pillaging. That's it, guys.
women being the more vulnerable sex in terms of strength, certainly, in terms of defenselessness, in terms of having to be the generators of the next generation, of course, the reproductive investment costs that are associated with women and bearing children, carrying a child to term, and then being effectively helpless for pretty much that whole time while she is pregnant, and then again raising that child in some way, either as a collective or as a single, person, a mother of that child, until that child reaches self-sufficiency. And you can argue as to when that age happens, but let's just say maybe 8 to 10 years old, when that kid can fend for itself. So there's a lot of vulnerability. There's a lot of need for protection. There's a lot of need for investing in the right guy, of course. Now, back in our ancestral past, when we lived in a more, let's say, brutal patriarchy, what women were subjected to at that time affected the psychology of women and their nature in today's time. So when a woman gets over you really quick, or she seems to want to get on as quickly as possible with another guy, there's a reason for that, and there's an evolutionary reason for that. So what happens then is, if you are, let's just say, imagine yourself right now, you are one of these women who was taken as a spoil.
I think in order to be able to say that, I mean, is it plausible? Sure. Is that evolution? I don't know. It's not Darwinian evolution necessarily, or it's not macroevolution necessarily, but I think you'd have to point to some kind of a gene or different genes that have changed over time in order to be able to state that this evolved, if you will. You know what I mean? But evolution is just another one of those theories that, look, it could be true. I don't believe it is. I think it's ridiculous. But let's suppose that it could be true. Okay, fair enough. But you've never proved that it is. So we could, keep investigating, keep talking about it, but to start basing whole worldviews on something that's just a theory, I mean, how likely is it that you're correct, right? You imagine a world, even though there's plenty of evidence that that's not the way the world looked, right? You imagine this world, and now you're using this theoretical framework of evolution to say that that world, which I imagine existed a certain way, was shaped by this theoretic. Like, it's just bullshit on top of bullshit, guys. It really is. Now, I'm not saying that there's like zero truth to this, but I mean, why couldn't it be that, well, women are just the way they are, and no matter the circumstance, that's how they react, because that's just how they were programmed or designed to be. Period. Like, why does it have to be, evolution? And he doesn't have any proof for any of this anyway. And it's, a whole bunch of imagination, guesses, conjecture on top of exactly that, right? It's really, it's just made up, and wishy-washy, and super dogmatic.
War as a war bride, and you've been taken from your tribe. Your husband and your mated pair, father of your children, is now dead. All of your children are now dead, except for maybe the younger girls aren't. And you have been captured and taken and I mean this in general terms. I don't mean this in literal terms. Like, you're taken to a new country, you're taken to a new land, you're taken to a new tribe, you're taken from what you knew into a new social situation that you don't know. And so you have two choices at that point. You can either put up a fight and most likely die, be devoted to.
Why couldn't you get along for a while and then look for an opportunity, once you gain some trust, for an opportunity to escape or slit your captor's throat or whatever, right? No, 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 no. There are only two options, okay? Because if I give you too many options, the whole thing just falls apart.
Your now dead husband and your now dead sons, and you can die yourself. That's choice number one. Choice number two is to get along as best that you can, which is fall in love with your captor. Find some way to rationalize why you are now with a superior tribesman or whoever it is, whoever you've been sort of passed off to, and form some kind of psychological defense mechanisms that encourage that, or in some way adapt survival-wise to that new situation.
I mean, look, yeah, I'm sure that did happen in certain situations with certain women who had no choice. I mean, falling in love with the captor, yeah, that could happen, I suppose. But I mean, if this is what went on all over the world, and every woman today, because this is essentially what he's saying, every woman today is descended, has the genes of at least one woman that had that done to her, right? Every single woman on this planet is a descendant of one of these kidnapping and rape victims, basically, and has adapted to accept kidnapping and rape. How come women are not okay with being kidnapped and raped? Like, I mean, it's a horrible thought. Don't get me wrong, but this is what he's saying, right? That women, you kidnap and rape women today, right? You'll be able to convince them to accept that and justify it and be okay with that, right? That's not. Is that who women are today? Really? Now, what about guys, right? If we murdered all the weak husbands and we took their wives, right? Or our ancestors did that, that means every single one of us, just like the women, right? But they can't talk about both sides, right? They have to just point the finger at women and just talk like women, don't look over here, son, right? Just blame them for everything, right? Even though we're like, okay, we're the rapists, right? We're the kidnappers and the rapists, but it's all her fault. That like, none of this makes any sense. She's the toxic one, right? Not us, the descendants of kidnappers and rapists, murderers, right? but if that's their genetic makeup, right? This is their evolution. This is who they are. Then, you know, that's who we are too, right? We're kidnappers, murderers, kidnappers, and rapists. That's what we are, right? Do you think you'd feel okay with murdering someone? I mean, maybe in some cases you'd be driven to do that because you felt like you had no choice, right? But do you think you'd be okay with that? Right? You should be programmed to be perfectly cool with just murdering people. Should be no big deal, right? And then kidnapping women and raping them. All right, ladies and gentlemen, or maybe just gentlemen, are you okay with that? Let me ask the ladies, are you okay with that? Do you think you can find a way to justify that and be okay with it? And I guess you don't really know until it happens. You know what I mean? But, I mean, if you're pre-programmed to, you think you'd be okay with that? Or you think you'd be over there slitting your captor's throat, right? Do you think there are women left alive today who put in that situation where, their house gets raided and they know what's coming, right? Because this is what happens everywhere, and you're genetically programmed to understand this. Do you think some women today might just slit their throat, take a poison pill, commit suicide, whatever, right? Or fight to the death? No, you shouldn't be able to, because you're not programmed to do that. Because, you know what I mean? Those genes should have been rooted out a long time ago, right? And once again, men, all of us are genetically programmed to be murderers, rapists, kidnappers, right? To a point where we justify doing these things and we're okay doing these things. Is that our nature, guys? Is that who we are? And if that's who we are, why do we start crying like a bunch of little bitches when a girl leaves us? Like, Rollo, you're not making any sense, dude. You know what I mean? These tough, these descendants of these tough murderers, these vile, right? Like, unemotional men capable of doing and justifying horrible, horrible things, right? Soon as a girl leaves them, no, she wasn't kidnapped, okay? No one stole her from you, homie. It's likely that you just fucked up. Or maybe she did. Maybe she is one of those that just likes to use men and likes to jump from this guy to that guy. Maybe those women exist also, right? But you, as a descendant of, these vile murderers, kidnappers, and rapists, right? You all of a sudden fall into depression, feel like killing yourself maybe. You have something akin to, if not quite as bad as PTSD, as Rollo says, right? Simply because she wasn't kidnapped, right? Your whole village wasn't murdered. You're not the sole survivor where you watched everyone get murdered and all the women kidnapped to be raped, right? No, no, no. That's not what happened to your girl. She, of her own volition, went and did whatever it is she did. And she's enjoying it, seemingly, anyway, right? No one's forcing her to do any of that stuff. That makes you break down emotionally and cry, right? Where you need this daddy over here to explain everything to you, pat you on the back and say, it's not your fault, it's her fault. Because evolution, and she's programmed to do this. Okay, so then explain to us why we're programmed to be such bitches when this shit happens. Those of us that are that. How did that happen, Rollo? Anyway, that's all I gotta say, man. This is just pseudoscientific drivel. It doesn't make any sense. It's full of contradictions. You take some of these mechanisms that they describe by which we became who we are, and you apply them comprehensively, right, all across the board, and the whole thing just falls apart. Okay? At the very least, he could be honest enough to say that this is just a theory, it's just a hypothesis, right? But if you say that means that you could still question it, and it's very easy to debunk it, right? So he has to project confidence, right, by manipulating his voice, hiding his receding hairline, doing whatever else he has to do to not show his true self, right? And then he just has to bullshit and make stuff up and rationalize whatever, rationalize relationships or breakups to make you feel good, pat you on the back, so that you pad his pockets. Basically, it's not your fault. It's her fault, right? She was programmed to do this. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough. This is so immature, childish, pseudoscientific, trash, garbage, a little bit gay, and it's just a trap, man. It's just it's so low IQ and dumb. It really it's a sad statement on where a lot of men are, right? How childish, infantile, and immature unable to reason, okay, what men are these days, how pussified men are. And I'm telling you guys, these guys need these so-called beta males because no alpha is going to listen to this beta. And again, I don't believe in that stuff, but if we are to step into their world, this guy is a complete and utter beta. You know, comforting other betas. It's so sad to see men so pussified and so emotional that they cannot even think rationally. Soon as somebody starts patting them on the back, they just accept everything just because it sounds good. Where's your reason, man? Question what it is that he's saying. Even if you believe in evolution, okay? Take this evolutionary paradigm and apply it to yourself. Are you some brave, strong, emotionless murderer, kidnapper, and rapist? Or maybe something a little bit different, right? Because unless you're able to understand yourself and who you truly are, you're never going to be able to solve these problems. And these guys feeding you all this bullshit, saying that you're a bitch beta boy on the one hand, descended from, ruthless murderers that don't have any feeling, it doesn't make any fucking sense. Anyway, that's my video, man. Just, this shit's so gay. Thanks for watching.